Welcome to the Discover Indie Film Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and this is going to be a fun one. I have a very talented person. Jaime Saginor is with me. Hey, Jaime.
Hi. I am so happy to be here.
Thank you. And you're so quick because I normally remember to warn people I'm going to pull you in early because I don't like to do a long monologue, but you reacted perfectly.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, you are here because in 2022, your film, Black Creek Trail, was at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, took home the Programmer's Prize. I love the film. You know I'm a big fan of it.
Thank you.
And actually, I will always remember your Q&A because I thought that was it's like just a particularly memorable Q&A that we had at the theater.
Yeah, it was fun. I like the way you do the Q&As. Just separately, film by film. That's very interesting. I've never seen that done.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I should just cross my fingers and hope no one copies the model. Right. But I don't know why. Everyone, with shorts, everyone's like, normally they just bring up 8 or 9 filmmakers at once and let us talk for 15 seconds, then we're done. I'm like, no. The whole point of a film festival is to talk about the movies, right?
I love it.
So your film, you were the lead actor, you wrote it, you produced it.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine you hired your director, you hired everybody involved.
Yeah, and then my co-producer helped with some of that as well. I mean, she brought in our DP, for instance, so that was huge, and also found our other lead actor, which was a last-minute thing, and we were so lucky to have gotten him. So
very cool, yeah. Aaron Rose Widner was I got my notes.
You do.
I got notes.
Yes.
But before we talk too much about the film, well, first, though, you want to say where people can catch it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Actually, the easiest place to go is just our website, blackcreektrailmovie.com. And right now it's on Amaretto. So there's a link on the site to go watch it on Amaretto.
Amaretto is so good.
Yeah.
I have to admit, they cracked the YouTube code.
Yeah, they did.
They managed to they created a little island inside YouTube's billions of shitty videos.
Right.
And there's a little island of quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just wonderful. I'm glad you're on there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, as you were warned, I'm just going to ask the open-ended question. How did you get into the creative arts? We joked before we started recording about it's a calling, but how early did you get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this and talked about this also with my brother, because he's got kids, and we're like, how young do you figure out what you want to do? And honestly, for both of us, I mean, I just knew by age, 4 or 5, I was making plays in my home. I was making my brother, my actor and my prop, in these plays. And I just always knew I wanted to be a writer and an actress. Those were the two things I knew from the earliest of ages. And my brother at age 3 or 4, he was like, I am science, that's it. And he is, and it's just wild to think of that. And then to look at, his kids and think, they might be the things that they're displaying right now in their childhood, we're going to see. Is it like that too? So I've known for my whole life that's it, writer, actress. I didn't think it was possible as a career a lot of the time along the way. So that's been tough. But in terms of my passion and my desire, that's always been there.
All right. Amusingly personal questions that I find fascinating. So, older sister, younger sister?
Oh, it's a younger brother.
Yeah. So you're the oldest.
I'm the old. Oh, yes.
You're
I am
the oldest of
sister.
2.
Yes.
No, I kind of got sold by a friend on birth order,
interesting.
So that's why I get it that you, as the older sibling, put him in your stuff.
I did.
Because you were the boss.
Yeah, and he was nice enough to literally do everything I asked, which sometimes was ridiculous things. So
true, but I'm just joking now. That being an older sibling is great training for being a movie producer. Because you're you got talent below you that that signed that by contract does what you say just because they're like, hey.
Yeah.
You've been my boss since I was born, right?
Right.
You interpret stuff for me that the parents don't understand. All right, so that's cool.
Yeah.
And I do love that it was so early. Mm-hmm. Can you identify were there films that you saw on TV or something that inspired you, or was it a school play, or you just knew?
No, I just knew. I mean, I grew up in New Hampshire, and I mean, it sounds like silly to say. I mean, I did see TV and films, of course, but we grew up on a dirt road. We only had 3 TV channels. I didn't even see MTV or know of MTV until like high school. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just was not in the know. But we did watch movies. My mom grew up in New York City, and she was a huge like theater and film person, and so we always did watch movies as a family. But it was way earlier than that I knew. So I don't even think that impacted my desire.
Right. It's just so fascinating to me because performance, I mean, kids are natural performers. Some are.
Yeah.
So you were. So when did you, was there a video camera or something that you got to play with? Or
Yes. Eventually, I think 6th grade, my dad got a video camera. And I, made my first movie, which is the most embarrassing thing in the world. And they insist on playing it for friends all the time. And I always think, oh my God, if that ever gets on the internet, I'm going to die. So I can't imagine what it's like for kids growing up today, where literally their entire childhood is just on the internet already. I am so grateful that as of now, it is still obscure. But yeah.
Your parents are thankfully not plugged into YouTube, although.
No.
Yeah.
They're not. I mean, like they have iPhones and stuff like that, but no, they're not.
Yeah. Thankfully, this is probably sitting on VHS, and
yes,
getting VHS
exactly.
to the internet is not always a smooth process anymore. Yeah,
exactly.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so you did that. I bet it's cute, though. I bet it's good.
Well, I mean, it's so embarrassing that it's like, I mean, I guess from a parent's perspective, it's cute. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you were probably
11-ish.
I mean, 11,
maybe,
12.
Maybe younger than that. I can't remember. 6th grade, I don't know how old you are.
You may not have made an Oscar caliber film at 10, 11.
No. But these days, kids do. But that's the thing, right? Like these days, people, kids take their iPhones and they actually make great stuff. And so it's extra embarrassing when you compare it to 10-year-olds today. But yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So, and then for that one, was it just you and the brother, or did you pull in friends?
No, I had a next door neighbor. And my brother, was a drunk driver, with a baby carriage. That was his car. Yeah, he was a drunk driver in the film.
Oh, so you had a purpose film.
Oh yeah.
I already see the theme. You've actually not just been drawn to art and performance, but with a purpose.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've always been conscious.
Black Creek Trail has a purpose.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, I turned vegetarian at a very early age. And so I think, I have been conscious of that kind of thing, of having, whatever my values were. And
very cool. So you were almost in like rural New Hampshire, like outside of the whatever city or college town.
Yes.
I only know New Hampshire for like college towns, really.
Dartmouth. Yeah, Dartmouth was about 40 minutes away. So that was, close enough that there was culture in the vicinity. But
yeah, like once you're in high school, you could go there and catch, because colleges always have cool films and things going on.
Yeah. And at least a coffee shop and that kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. So after that was there, and you pulled a neighbor in, which is cool, even though you weren't in a, if you had been on the Upper East Side or whatever, you would have had tons of kids.
Yeah.
But was there any school activities that you got to be involved in for it?
I was always doing theater, so I always did, the school plays, and then in high school I did school plays too, although oftentimes it was conflicting with sports, and I was a real sports person as well. So, if at the time, if I had to choose between, the play and soccer, I was going to choose soccer. So I did miss out on a couple of good plays, but yeah, I was always involved in that.
I got to admit, I'm just going to mention that like soccer is a team sport and filmmaking is a team sport. Like I feel like the team sport people take to the collaborative nature of film, whereas like gymnastics or like sometimes like an individual type sport, it doesn't prepare you to like be part of a team.
It's so true. And I was never drawn to individual sports. Never. In fact, I did track for a couple times, and my favorite thing in track was the relay race. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So then in high school plays, were you, I mean, you're younger than me, so I assume like, was there a little at high school, was there a little bit of a film department or cameras
No film.
nothing?
No film,
Nothing.
but there was a lot of theater classes. I mean, so, again, this was the middle of New Hampshire. And also today, I mean, technology grew so quickly. So I'm sure today people are doing stuff at least with their iPhones. I don't know. But they had just built a new, wonderful, like huge theater. And so it was all about the theater when I was there. Yeah. So
Very cool. All right. So did you do the responsible degree for college, or did you follow the passion for college?
I followed the passion, but I didn't even understand that there were specific degrees for arts because I just wasn't in the know about these things. So I went to college thinking I would major in theater. That's how I thought it was done. So I went to the University of Michigan with thinking I was going to just major in theater, as a BA. And I realized very quickly you cannot get into the actual acting classes unless you are in the acting program, a BFA. And I did not know that. And so once I figured that out, I reapplied to transfer into the School of Music, which is where the acting program was. And so I didn't enter that until the sophomore year. And in between, I went to a different college because, I don't know, I'm a Gemini. And I was like, I had gotten accepted into another college and I had this open semester. And I'm like, ooh, let me try it out. And, just in case I don't get into the BFA program, then I'll have choices. So
Very cool. So, wow. So was it a smooth process to switch? And by the way, how funny that acting is inside music.
Yeah,
It's kind of funny because you would assume going to the theater school would cover the acting part.
Right. Well, the theater was in the Bachelor of Arts, like theater degree, but that just meant like theater history. So where the actual...
Right, to be like a critic or a playwright.
Yes. Maybe a playwright. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, the actual acting was within the School of Music.
Cool. And you got in, which
I got in.
I mean, U of M is a great school, and I know most things there are kind of competitive. So that was probably felt like an accomplishment.
Yeah, definitely felt like an accomplishment. Although, once you're in the theater program, I mean, I didn't get to do a lot of the plays. And so it does feel like it feels very competitive within the theater program. And at the time, I remember thinking, why aren't they just letting everybody in the theater program be in all the plays? But that's not how it works. I guess they're just preparing you early for the real world. Yeah.
That is interesting because, I don't know, I'm the softy parent. Like, I think everyone should get a turn.
Right. Well, especially if it's education.
Yeah.
Like I really do understand the real world is the real world and, reality is reality. But I don't know. Education, I do think that, that's the place you're paying for, the opportunity to practice your craft. And however, I can't, that's all the negative I'll say about it because honestly, I loved the University of Michigan so much. I loved the theater program. I loved my classmates and the teachers. And I mean, I had an amazing time and I am very, very go blue,
And that's like a huge school, like
yes,
40, 50,000 or something, like something crazy. So was it a big program too? Was there like a lot of people in it?
The program wasn't huge because it was, very contained within itself. But I think that going from New Hampshire, this very, very small town where everyone knew each other, to this big school where I could be completely anonymous was exactly what I was looking for. And I loved it. I just felt so free. And I met a lot of my best friends who are my best friends to this day. I really can't say enough good about the University of Michigan.
Yeah, and I bet the BFA program was like also a nice little island.
It was.
Within U of M, right? So so you had a small community.
Yeah.
And yet I too made the choice to go to a big ass school.
Oh yeah, where'd
college.
you go?
Well, I went to UC Santa Barbara.
Okay.
But I had no desire to know my professors. I just wanted to be a face in the crowd.
Totally.
I wanted to be able to sleep in.
Yep.
I just wanted to be an honest guy. I went to a very small high school.
Yeah. It's amazing how that'll do it to you, and especially if you're, and I don't know if you are, but I'm a bit introverted. And so the idea of just people not knowing you and being able to hide if you want to was really appealing.
I don't understand people who aren't introverted. I mean, even though it seems like I enjoyed the public thing, it's actually the thing where you have to recharge your battery.
Yes.
Like I can do the film festival thing.
Yep.
But even there, I'm craving just the one-on-one conversations.
Yeah.
I like the quality one-on-one. I don't really actually have any desire to to be on stage or be known or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, weird for, performer people
Yeah,
to be like that. But
yeah, it's like, you don't want people to know who you are? No, I actually want to be like, if I should have like come up with a name like anonymous person for whatever. It's not about me. So at U of M, while you were in university, were you also still playing with cameras, or was solely like an acting program and it was really stage focused?
yeah, it was really stage focused. I was really stage focused at the time. I was, I moved to New York City after. And so I honestly didn't even think about film. It was really theater for me. I grew up in theater. It was very theater focused. And then I went to New York City, which is all theater focused, So yeah, the film thing didn't occur
musically
until later.
Too, or
no.
So you're not musical?
No,
so.
I wish I could sing, but not at all. Yeah.
Right. So you were fully drama.
Straight theater.
Theater drama, right? Right. Mm-hmm. And so you get to New York, so you graduate, do a couple plays in school, I assume, and then you go. What was the experience? I mean, by the way, congrats, because not everyone has the guts to just go to New York.
Yeah, I think a lot of my friends were going, and that was the place to go for theater, And the other option was LA, and the idea of going to LA was so unappealing to me at the time because I grew up in New Hampshire, and so my idea of LA was just like, oh, fake and plastic, and I don't know, whatever it was not appealing to me, and at the time. So
LA has horrible marketing.
It does. It really does, especially if you're an East Coast person. And also on the East Coast, New York City is like everything, right? And then when you're in New York City, you're like, well, this is it. This is the place that's the most important. And so
it is, in its own goofy way, the capital of the planet.
Yes.
Like it's not even the capital of this country or the capital of its state, and yet it is the hub of so many things.
Yeah.
Except one thing, which is, entertainment and technology, or movies.
Absolutely.
But so I won't defend LA too much, even though I'm third generation LA. But so was it, did you have the struggle like this?
Of course. Of course. Yeah. I mean, the idea of, submitting yourself as an actor, because at that time I wasn't writing. I mean, I had completely chosen acting, for school and for, career over writing.
Right. So like from sixth grade, but like the producing and like the sort of behind, I'm just going to resort to like behind the camera side of yourself went away for the whole education.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not until, so I was in New York and I did a 2-year, I did a bunch of different acting classes. I did this amazing class on Lanford Wilson plays, one of my favorite playwrights ever. And his partner taught the classes, so he was in the know on like all the plays and the writing of the plays, and that was heaven. But then after that, I did a 2-year acting program, a Meisner, William Esper, and then it turned into Maggie Flanagan's studio. She went and started her own studio, and we loved her so much we went with her the entire class. But anyway, so 2-year Meisner program, and then after that, when I was auditioning, I mean, it's brutal. It was just brutal, and I realized this is just an exercise in futility. You're putting out your headshot with hundreds of other people. You're standing in line with hundreds of other people for a non-union, non-paying student film trying to get into an audition. I mean, it was just insane. And so I did co-produce a one-act, scene night with another actor friend of mine, and that was the first sort of official producing that I did, and it was hard and it was stressful, but we did it, and we did a 2-night run of it, and we got to act in a little off Broadway thing, and so I think that's where the sort of producing my own stuff started.
Right, as usual, a bit out of necessity.
Yeah.
But also because you had those skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I didn't feel like it at the time, but yeah, I guess I had.
Or at least the drive.
Definitely the drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Lord knows the 1,000 people who line up for a non-paying student film, even if they have the drive, not everyone does their own off, rent a black box and put on a play kind of vibe.
Yeah, although I think that's becoming more and more common as the teaching now is create your own content. That's what people are being taught. It was absolutely not being taught.
Well, that's the goddamn internet, right? Like the goddamn internet has now made the idea of creating content. Yeah,
100%.
So now there's just so much low quality stuff. But anyway,
yeah.
So after that play, did you do a few more?
Not in New York City. I did do a summer stock, not that I produced it, but I, acted in a summer stock for a summer, and then moved to Seattle and then co-founded a theater company out there with people that I didn't know from New York City, but just happened to have all lived in New York City. So we called ourselves the West of Brooklyn Theater Company.
That's cool. Yeah. That's actually a clever name.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you were talking about your first play that you were talking about, it made me think of I almost was going to say The Necessity, Steppenwolf in Chicago.
Absolutely.
Was just a bunch of super talented actors who were also creative and could write. And they had to start their own thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't that Malkovich and Sinise and all these people were such big shots. They started their own. They started it out of necessity.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, that's kind of exactly what happened in Seattle, too.
What inspired Seattle?
Well, because it was a theater town that was outdoorsy. I mean, New York City I loved, but it was so hard to live there after growing up in New Hampshire. I just needed nature. And so I kind of traveled across the country and traveled, to all these different places. Where am I going to live next? And I visited a lot of cities. And when I visited Seattle, I fell in love with it. And a friend of mine joined me, and we went snowboarding up in the mountains in Washington. But I was like, okay, this area. So I moved there, and I ended up not liking it. But I stayed there for 2.5 years anyway, because I didn't really admit to myself I didn't like it until 2.5 years later. But in the meantime,
was it a lack of sunlight got to you?
Absolutely a lack of sunlight. Absolutely. And also coming from New York City, it felt very small town, and it didn't feel progressive. It was supposed to be, but it wasn't. But compared to New York City, I felt very much like it wasn't. And it was really hard for me to be there. And there was a passive aggressive sort of thing instead of an aggressive thing, which was New York City, which I was used to. I wasn't used to the passive aggressive. And I was bartending at the time, and I remember being really confused about it. What is going on here? People are really polite, but then I'm not able to connect to people really. And I was talking to a customer who was from Seattle one day, and he said, oh yeah, that's called the Seattle Chill. And I was like, the Seattle Chill? It has a name? And he's like, oh yeah. So I guess it's a thing.
So... Wow, I could dive into that. It's just so people who like to live in a gloomy, rainy city so that they're so introverted that any human interaction is kept at the most superficial level. Is that it? Just don't interact. Because amusingly, I'm just going to have to mention it. I knew a guy who after college, we graduated in the late 80s and moved there for a job and started a zine called Frank's Torment about how miserable life was in Seattle.
I mean, listen, I did make some good friends there who still live there. So I don't want to,
Yeah, no, I mean, by the way, wonderful city.
Yeah.
Just it's hard adjustments.
It was.
Because of weather and now this chill I finally have heard about. Yeah.
Yes. And, after New York City where everyone shows up to theater, it's like if you've got a theater thing coming, everyone will go out and do it. It was so hard to get people to come out and see, our theater, except for the big, the big theaters out there who already, had.
Right. So a Broadway show comes to town and people come out.
Yes.
But they're not supporting the indie scene.
They're not, the indie scene, that was much harder. And I wasn't used to that type of thing. And also it just felt... I got depressed. I was depressed there.
Yeah, no, it's common.
Yeah.
Frank's Torment. But also, it could have been Jamie's Torment. But also, and I just want to ask about, you sense a lack of progressiveness too, compared to New York.
Yeah, when I was there, I was just very conscious of, I was bartending, I was catering, I was doing all these things. And I just, it felt like the city was segregated.
It's a super white city.
And it was segregated. It felt segregated. It didn't feel good. And, a lot of the catering events were just very, very white. And I just was like, what is going on here? It just, it felt a little bizarre. But again, coming from New York City, right? Like the contrast was just a rough contrast.
I completely understand what you're saying, because as a third generation Angelino, every time I visited a segregated city, it's like a punch in the face.
Yeah.
Like LA is very multicultural. Like there is we have a Thai town and a this and a that, but there's bridging between all neighborhoods where it's all mixed.
Yeah.
And you go to other areas and it's like, north of this street is white, south of this street isn't.
Yeah.
And it's like, why the division? It is weird.
Yeah.
And what about, I'm just going to ask, like, as a woman, was Seattle like less progressive for a woman too?
I didn't notice that necessarily. I didn't notice that. No. But I did notice that outside of the city, it was very... potentially, like
gets redneck pretty fast.
Yes, well, I said we weren't going to get into politics, but it definitely felt.
I know. I guess redneck is like a slur.
Yes,
but it's a slur I'm comfortable with.
Just more country and more, conservative thinking.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that's this whole country, right? The entire USA is blue islands surrounded by red. Whatever. Yeah, we won't get too political, but there you go. And I guess I asked the woman perspective thing because Black Creek Trail. I see you as someone who is actively aware of gender imbalances in society and whatnot.
For sure. There wasn't, Black Creek Trail definitely did not come from my experiences in Seattle directly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so still no film work though, right? All stage.
I started film in Seattle. I did. I did a couple of, let's see, was it? Yeah, I think I was a small role. No, actually, I was a small role in one feature. I did get one of the bigger roles in another feature that I don't think ever got completed. It was quite a drama experience. I don't even know what was going on with that production, but I got experience. And then there was a sort of short film, a long short film that I was in, and that was, I thought a really good thing to dive into in terms of film acting. And I did have to learn the difference because I was performing, quote unquote, to the audience in a way that after I looked at a lot of the footage, I was like, ooh, okay, that was a lesson for
But those
me.
were films you auditioned for.
Those were films I auditioned for.
Right, so there was a bit of an indie scene for filmmaking up there. And there were things to audition for. Yeah, boy, the transition from stage to camera. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had to learn what that meant.
And I can't help it. Every actor should be given a role in a film that goes nowhere. Just for the experience, just to realize, like, you could pour your heart. You have to be aware that, like, studios will make something and bury it. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. That one experience was wild. I mean, I think that the footage got ruined. I don't even think it made it to the edit. I'm not sure what happened with that other one, to be honest, but it was a wild experience.
Right. But a good experience. And it so did a light bulb go off in your head? The producer in you also thought, oh, movies, I can produce these too, or not yet?
Not producing, but writing. That's when I started writing, because the producing of the theater company was a lot. It was really hard. And I said to myself, I'm not ever producing again, actually, is what I said. And of course, that didn't end up happening. But I had taken an intro to screenwriting class, over the summer when I was still on the East Coast. And so I had this idea in my head that I did want to start writing. And I got some ideas in Seattle, but it wasn't until I moved to LA that I actually started writing.
Cool. All right. You said the magic words, move to LA.
Yeah.
It was time. It was just you didn't consider going back to New York. It was time for LA.
No, I did. I knew I couldn't live in New York just because I needed nature. I had two really good friends that lived in LA who were really down to earth people, so they shattered my ignorance about who Los Angelinos people were. And I visited them, and I thought, okay, actually, maybe LA is not so bad. And I was so cold up in Seattle that I thought, well, at least I'll just spend some time in LA and warm up, and then if I don't like it, I can move somewhere else.
I can wear shorts again.
Let me warm my cold heart and get out of my depression. So yeah, I moved here and I fell in love with it immediately. I was like, oh my God, I had such ideas in my head about why I wouldn't like LA, and I actually love it. Yeah.
I'm giving Jamie a golf clap because it is, and in LA's defense, I can't help but say it, like, people are normal and nice here. Like, yes, there are, and you're a transplant, but most of the assholes are the transplants who came here for the wrong reasons.
Right, yeah.
But it's actually like just nice, normal people live here like anywhere else. It's just, every once in a while, well, whatever. I don't know what percentage of the town are jerks. But they're never born here.
Well, listen, I mean, there's people everywhere that aren't, that could be mean or nice, but generally speaking, there was a friendliness here and a willingness to engage. And that reminded me of New York, even though people that come from New York directly to LA talk about such a culture shock. But coming from New York to Seattle to LA, I found LA and New York to be much more similar.
Right. And your two friends who were here, were they actors or?
No. And that was part of what made me feel like LA must be okay. These two friends of mine are so down to earth. They're not even in the industry. They love LA. They're so cool. It must be okay then.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, so you moved down. I'm just going to, what part of LA did you land in?
I first lived in Highland Park because my friend who was living here said, I know you, I know what you'll like. This is where I think you should live. And he was absolutely right. I lived there for the first few years and loved it. And then I stayed on the east side pretty much until just last year.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So when did you discover, a small theater community first, or did you just jump into like the auditioning?
I started
path?
auditioning. I was really exhausted from theater at this point. I was just burnt out. And so I was ready to make the transition to film and TV. And I had an agent from Seattle who had moved to LA. And so I kind of was back pocketed by him, when I first moved here. But I also wasn't SAG, and I had no idea, what I was doing. And, it was hard to sort of get anywhere with the auditioning because theater credits don't mean anything here. So I was starting from the beginning. And I realized very quickly, like, oh, this might take a minute. So I actually did a detour, and I became a holistic health coach just to be able to, have something that I could pay my rent with.
A side gig,
yeah. So I did that.
Every actor needs one.
And honestly, I was getting so burnt out on bartending and all of the other things that, actors do.
Right, you'd already done that.
I'd already done it, and I still did it here in LA. I mean, I still did, nannying. I still did a bunch of that stuff for a while, but I transitioned into holistic health coaching, which I still do today. And then just got sick of auditioning and started writing and making my own stuff. And that's really how it started to happen.
And just out of curiosity, with your experience of this transition from stage to camera, when you landed here, did you do some classes and things?
Yes.
And like acting on camera type stuff or with a focus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've taken a bunch of different types of classes here. One was specifically an on-camera audition class, a bunch of things. But I feel but a lot of them were casting director workshops before that was kind of banned. And so...
I didn't know they're banned. They
Well,
got banned because of the conflict of interest with casting directors?
Yeah, someone brought
or
a
were
lawsuit.
were they sexual harassment?
No,
Okay.
it wasn't that. It was someone brought a lawsuit about like the pay to play kind of thing, and the lawsuit bankrupted a bunch of the big casting director workshop places, and it just started to not become like really as much of a thing. I'm sure it's there to some degree still in some way that's under the radar for them not to get sued again. But which was really too bad because that was one way to, if you did not have an agent, which, after I became a holistic health coach, my agent dropped me very quickly because I was out of the scene for a couple of years. But if you don't have an agent, that was a way to be introduced to casting directors.
Yeah, almost showcase.
Absolutely.
Like a show. Yeah. All right, so is Black Creek Trail like the first project, or were there? No, there were more. Okay.
Yeah. So my first project, I had a script called Between Shifts that came from the inspiration was from living in Seattle and being, a cater waitress and doing double shifts and stuff. And I had written this, cute little script, but I didn't want to. I didn't even know the first thing about making a movie. So I was, sending it to production companies and stuff like that who were looking for shorts. Of course, nothing came out of it. And eventually a friend of mine, was talking about making his own thing. And I said, well, I have a short script. And, anyway, that's how it's happened, of just like, actually, I don't think this is going to get made unless I make it. And that was a horrifyingly, I don't know, like the learning curve for that first short film was so intense and so excruciating in a lot of ways, but then so gratifying when we finally made it and we finally went to festivals. And I just couldn't believe that we had done it. And, and that collaboration and my co-producers and my director and the cast and the crew. I mean, it was so much fun, and it felt like we had climbed Mount Everest. And so that gave me the confidence of, okay, all right, this is the way I'm going now. Yeah.
I mean, it's trite, and people say this all the time, but making an indie film is film school.
It is. It is. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and then you have to deal with it, and you will make every mistake that every first-time filmmaker makes, and then you realize not to do that again.
Do you use a Beatles song? I'm just kidding. Music use is one of my biggest pet peeves with people's first films. I'm like, don't fall in love with a song you can't afford. But whatever.
My gosh. Yeah, and I did that on a subsequent short film, which we then really actually tried to get the rights, couldn't, and then couldn't replace it. We were just like, devastated. So yes, I did.
Yeah, you'd already locked picture, and you're like, well, I've locked picture and sound. Yeah, well, but
so I made that mistake later.
My music complaint jumped ahead.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But it turned out well because you were in festivals and whatnot.
Yeah, we went to festivals. We won, a handful of awards, and it was just
what was the genre? Was it?
It was romantic. Grounded fantasy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like a magical realism. I
was going to say that word.
Yeah, and there was no dialogue. We actually added one line of we looped in a line of dialogue later in ADR, but other than that, it was no dialogue, and it was just about this diner waitress, this lonely diner waitress who has a Cinderella-like transformation between her lunch and dinner shift, and it was just a very sort of magical, uplifting, sweet little film. So,
right. And you wrote, produced, and you were played the lead role.
Yes. Yeah.
And you picked a director?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A girl in my writers group who had directed a few music videos.
You joined a writers group, which is super smart.
I did, yeah. And in fact, the person invited me, it was almost like an acting, a business for actors class that I met him in, and he and his friend also in that class started a writers group, and they asked me if I wanted to join because I talked about writing, and I wasn't ready to do it yet. So a couple years later, he reached out again and said, we're really looking for some more women in this group. Are you ready? And I was like, okay, now I'm ready. And so, yeah, I joined it, and I'm still in that writers group.
It's so good. The idea that writing should be an isolated, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
You can tell when there's never been a second pair of eyes on a script.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Which, it was a shock for me going in there presenting my stuff for the first time. I mean, you had to get used to feedback, and feedback, when at the beginning, people usually take it personally and it hurts your feelings, and then you feel bad about yourself. And then once you really get used to it, you're like, oh, this is such a gift. All of this feedback is going to make my script so much better. But it takes a minute. Again, that learning curve.
And to hear your words out loud, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So different than you can stare on it for a screen or on the page. You can write it out by hand. You can type it until you hear it spoken. Yeah, it's totally different.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a gift that writer's group is. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. So did the next script come through that?
So I had 2 more before Black Creek Trail. One of them was a friend of mine who was a director and cinematographer who had seen Between Shifts and said, hey, I think that was great. I'd love to do something. Why don't you write something that takes place because we don't want to spend money on this, that takes place anywhere in my apartment complex, and you can act in it, and I'll direct it and shoot it. And I said, okay. So I wrote something up, and we did that. And that was just like a real quick, weekend production, very low budget. And that one, it actually took a few years to finish because he was so busy as a cinematographer, and he was also trying to direct it and edit it and do the color and all of this stuff. So it just took a very, very long time to complete that one. And by the time we did the festivals, it was after the pandemic. So it was delayed. So I only applied to a few festivals because it just kind of felt like the moment had passed a little bit. But still, making it was equally important to just more skills, more practice, all of that, and also of how to produce and act at the same time, which is very difficult. And I needed that practice. And then during that time also, I did another one, which was a co-production, co-produced with someone who wanted me to act in his film, but was struggling with the script, and then eventually asked me to co-write it with him, and then eventually co-produce. And so I ended up doing that again.
In other words, your skills are too multifaceted. Well, unless if you were brought on to something where they had everything in place, great.
Yes.
But because of your skill set, you land on something, and when you see holes, you're like, well, let me help plug that hole, because otherwise the thing I'm in won't be as good as it could be. Honestly,
that's exactly right. But the funny thing is that after each one, I say, I'm never producing again. I'm never doing it again. I can't focus on the acting. Forget it. And then, of course, it keeps happening.
Right. That habit of but on the day, hopefully you can just act.
Yeah,
but it's tough.
It's tough, and that's the part that I haven't mastered yet, is getting to the place where there's not so many fires to put out up until the moment I'm acting that I can actually. So I'm jumping ahead just a little bit. I'm, trying to get a feature made, and I am going to, attempt anyway that a month before we shoot, I'm going to stop all producing and just take me out of the loop. Don't tell me anything that's going on. I don't, because it's just too hard not to get into your right brain.
Right.
I mean, to your left brain. Yeah.
Right. In other words, so you'll need somebody. You'll need a UPM or whatever the role, co-producer. Yes. Somebody to say, run everything through that person.
Exactly.
And if they really need to interrupt me, it'll be their choice.
Yes.
But they'll have to deal with my blazingly angry reaction or whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But no, I'm crossing my fingers for you that you get that month.
Thank you. I mean, it probably won't happen, but just to at least try,
I try. There's a thing on my calendar called festival lockdown. I'm 2 weeks for the festival. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. There's always shit.
Right? It's so hard because things just always come up, and that's what happens when you're making a film.
And you're like, what do you need me for? So-and-so. And then you're like, fine. Mm-hmm. Some decisions you have to make.
Yep.
Sucks. All right. So there was the film that the pandemic sort of interrupted, but that was also, someone else's project in a way, right? It was the other person was the director and producer of sorts. So, so then was there another one for Black Creek Trail?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
said?
So then
Yeah,
the other
there's two.
co-production, co-writing, and then I acted, he directed, and that one was literally zero budget. So that one was rough production value, in a sense. But then post-production, we sort of pulled together a little bit. We really needed it. I mean, just the sound and everything was rough. So we did the best we could, and we indie
Sounds like you're
filmmaking.
chalking that one up to a learning experience again.
But then we felt really proud of what we did. We really did feel proud of it. I mean, the edit, we co-edited it, and it really took a long time because we realized like, wow, we are screwed for footage here. What are we going to do? But that forces you into creative, problem solving. And when you finally figure it out, I mean, yeah, it's not ideal how we want, in terms of what we wanted it to be, but we were able to make it work to a degree that we felt like, okay, we're really proud of ourselves here. We did that. And that is important. Those were lessons too that needed to be learned. Yeah.
For sure. And then you write Black Creek Trail?
Yeah. So I wrote the feature first. Was trying to figure out how to get the funding for it. Of course, funding a feature is extraordinarily difficult. And so during the pandemic, I decided, okay, you know what? We're going to make this. I'm going to, write a short film of it as a proof of concept, and we're going to make that instead because I'm tired of like waiting, and especially after knowing what it felt like to shoot a short and get it done. I just was like, I want this to exist, and maybe it'll help us with the feature. So that's what we did.
And you wrote. I'm going to jump back to when you wrote the feature.
Yeah.
So what were the inspirations for writing it?
So the inspiration was that I went on this solo backpacking journey. It was actually within the context of a 9-day wilderness quest that was in a, sort of like an educational situation. And in the middle of it, or it kind of culminates to a 3-day solo where you go off and find, a place that you're going to stay by yourself. And for 3 days, no tent or anything, just, they taught us how to tie a tarp and all the stuff. And you just stay there for 3 days. And it's also a fast. So it's kind of like a spiritual, quest kind of thing. And it was absolutely amazing, and it was so profound. And I'd already done, something like that when I was 15. I did an Outward Bound course that had a 3-day solo in it. So I was very excited to do this. But when I was alone, I had the experience of, and of course, before I went in, I was, afraid of the animals. I was like, oh God, I hope there's not a cougar or whatever. But when I got there, what really scared me was that one of the days, especially after I hadn't eaten for a day and I was feeling pretty weak, and I was moving slowly, I saw, it was in the Inyo Desert, like the high mountain desert, so you can see, and a black truck had driven up sort of like this dirt path and parked and facing me. Now it was a little ways away, but you could see clearly, and they could see me. And I was wearing a bright red thing. And when I saw them, I mean, I just fell apart. I don't know who was in the truck, but of course my mind went crazy with scenarios of who that might be. And of course, what if it was a man, and what if it was 2 men, or what if they decided to come out, hike out where I was and ask me, are you hiking alone? And I hid behind a rock for 40 minutes, just panicking and thinking of all the scenarios of what I could say, what I could do, my mind, just going crazy. And then eventually they just turned around and drove away. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that was crazy. Like what I just did in my head was crazy, but was it an intuitive thing, or was it my fear just getting the best of me? Or what if they had come, and that whole debate with yourself about, is it your intuition? Is it fear? I mean, I was jumping to this crazy conclusion that maybe they were going to hurt me when they could have been so nice. But then that stuff happens all the time. And I realized, like women go through that constantly. You're in an elevator alone. You're constantly in your head. Am I in danger? Am I in danger, or am I not? And also feeling bad about maybe, thinking that about a nice person who has no harmful intention. So that became the impetus for writing Black Creek Trail. I just wanted to write the what if scenario and follow that to the bitter end, and that internal, struggle that a woman would go through.
And in your defense, I mean, you call it crazy, but it's totally rational.
It is.
It's totally rational because whatever the percentage of humanity is awful, we're aware.
Yes.
And a person alone,
Yes.
particularly a woman, but a person alone is vulnerable.
Yep.
If it had been me and I had anything of value on me and a truck, I can see a truck as, they might be looking for someone to rob.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or take whatever, well, you were fasting, but they wouldn't know that. But you know what I mean? Yes. I do have to mention the manor bear thing, but you were way ahead on it.
It's so weird because this manor bear thing happened recently and people started texting me and emailing me and like, oh my God, this is just like your film. And the crazy thing is that it literally is. I mean, in the feature, there is a bear that shows up in the film, and it specifically is the difference between the man or the bear in the film. And I couldn't believe it when this manor bear thing came up, but that was the thing that was the most surprising to me, was that I thought the thing I was going to be the most scared of was the wildlife. And the thing I was the most scared of wasn't even the man, was even the possibility that there might be a man. And that was the most terrified I was the entire time.
Yeah, I know. If the people had stepped out of the pickup truck and it was two women,
right,
that would have been, I can imagine just how relieving it would have been.
Yeah.
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 And then they could have robbed you. No, I can't.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly.
But you wouldn't have to worry about a whole other host of problems.
That's exactly right. And I think when this man versus bear conversation came up and men were so confused or upset by it, it's like, well, but a bear would do this to you and a bear, well, yeah, but the worst thing a bear can do is just kill you.
Yeah, it will kill and eat you or injure you.
Or injure you, right.
But also, a bear will only injure you if it feels under threat.
That's right. And the amount, I mean, I've encountered bears before, there's been many bear encounters and there's, but so it's not that there's not reason to be afraid of a bear. Obviously there is, but in the history of what has occurred to women by men that we are aware of every day of our lives, that that we've had an entire experience of living in this world as a woman for however many years we've been alive. I mean, it is terrifying. It is terrifying. Yes,
it is, absolutely, and you totally capture it on film. Oh, man, I wish you had gotten the feature made just because you could have jumped on this moment.
I know. Well, we used the man versus bear moment to make a little trailer out of the film to help us for the funding of the feature.
Oh, wonderful. Is that the feature that you're hoping to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we're working on. And we do have I have my co-producer who was my co-producer for the short film, and she's on it with me. But then we also have two other producers who we signed a shopping agreement with, who are, actively seeking out, either attachments or the funding or both together. And so we'll see.
Excellent. Okay. So you had the, I'll just call it the outbound experience that inspired the story. You wrote the feature, and then you put back on the producer's hat to make the short.
Yes.
Happy times, yeah? I don't recall anything from the Q&A at the theater being like it was a nightmare to make.
No, it was so stressful leading up to it because, I mean, all of the elements, right? It was just me and my co-producer. She has a full-time job and a toddler, and then I'm preparing to act. And so, it was intense, as it always is. And it was very difficult. I mean, there were things up until the moment that I started acting, and even the first hour on camera, luckily we shot the other guy first because it took me about an hour to finally calm my brain down and just try to get into the moment. But things like, I didn't secure the location officially until 2 days before because we didn't secure our lead actor until 2 days before we shot. I mean, it was this kind of manic.
Your supporting actor.
The supporting, yes.
You're the lead.
Well, yes, I really do consider, it's funny because we were like.
You consider co-lead.
I consider him a co-lead, absolutely. But technically, I guess he's supporting. I mean, yes. So anyway, we didn't get him until 2 days before. It was crazy stressful.
Was there someone else lined up who had pulled out, or it was just always a little fluid?
We were trying to go for reaching, for bigger actors who could then be in the feature, just like Whiplash, like that kind of Whiplash setup. And what happened is that when we were reaching out to the bigger actors, first of all, people were taking a little bit of time to get back to us. Every single male actor in their white male actor in the 40s was booked solid. And we were just shocked because this was sort of like, I guess, when they'd figure out how to do stuff during the pandemic, but they were booked solid. And then we went down. Okay, let's try guest role people. Let's try booked solid. Oh, he's going to be flying out. He'll be back that night though, but And we were like, are you kidding me? We could not secure an actor for it. And 2 days before, Aaron Rose knew Jalone through a theater company, actually, that they'd done some time before. And he said, he could be really good for it. And I had looked at his resume, or not his resume, his headshot. I'm like, he seems too pretty for the role. He's like a really good looking guy. And I just thought, he should look scarier. But he ended up being absolutely perfect. We reached out to him. He was booked solid the day after we were done shooting. He was booked solid for a month and a half to do 2 back-to-back features. The fact that we got him on the day and he said yes, and probably because, of his relationship with Aaron Rose, said yes, it was amazing. Anyway, we were so lucky to have him. He was so good. I mean, he luckily had this beard that he'd grown out for the role for the other one, so he looked all gruff, and he was so charming and in just the right way. And then the turn of also potentially terrifying. It just was perfect.
Yeah, no, both of you are excellent in it.
Oh, thank you.
If he hadn't arrived, were you just not going to shoot? What was going to happen?
No, we were freaking out.
You had a date for principal photography.
Yeah.
And 50% of your cast.
Yeah. I know.
Missing.
I know.
Wow.
It was so terrifying.
Such a lean. No wonder you needed an hour to chill out.
Yes.
You needed him to show up and be there that day for you to know it was really going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, and then we did have on that same day that we offered it to him, we finally had, because we had a friend, a casting director who had been helping us, and she did finally get someone to say yes to it, but we had already offered it to Jalone, and then, so that they both said yes at the same time. And so then we said, we already filled it to the other guy. But so I think we would have had someone at that point. But yeah, I mean, we were terrified. Yeah. I don't know what we would have done.
No wonder you were under so much stress. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But then on the day, was it a one-day shoot? Or
it was a one-day shoot. We did 12 hours. We were only allowed in there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the light was going down by 6:30 at the time. And that's it. We had to be in and out, load in, load out, and any amount of time that we stayed after, we were going to be charged extra, just like wedding venues. And so it was rough. It was rough, but the crew was amazing. And our director is so good. And she was so good at keeping time, in terms of just being able to be efficient with the time that we had and making the right choices for that. The first scene of the movie was the last scene we shot, and that scene was extremely rushed. And unfortunately, we struggled with that in the edit. We just didn't have the footage we wanted, but it is what it is. It's indie filmmaking. So
as a viewer, I can tell you, I didn't notice anything missing. It wasn't like, well, it's a rough start. No, I mean, it's great.
Well, thank you.
It's great.
Thank you.
And then, so you got through the edit and hit the festival circuit?
We hit the festival circuit.
2 years after COVID. So life was pretty close to, life was almost normal in 2022.
Well, so we premiered at the Pasadena Film Festival on the day that was first of all, right after Roe v. Wade was overturned, but second of all, when the worst COVID surge had happened since the beginning of COVID, and I ended up getting COVID from the festival.
Was that like June-ish?
It was
Omicron?
June, yes. And so it was rough
Right,
because
so
a lot of people couldn't come because it was just so you know, but we were determined to go anyway, and I wore a mask and I still got COVID.
Our June 2022 film invasion, the week before my wife got COVID, and I tested negative the whole time, but I started to feel the thing in my throat the weekend of the festival. I didn't give it to anybody.
Good.
But I tested positive on Monday after the festival ended Sunday. So
right.
I remember June 2022, there was a big ass surge.
Yes, it was a crazy surge.
Crazy to deal with this nonsense.
Yeah.
No one will ever believe us like 10 years from now when you talk about like what it was like to like, if I get COVID, it shuts my life down for 2 weeks. I can't shut my life down. That was crazy. All right, so you made it through the screen, but you got COVID.
But I got COVID
at your first festival.
But I almost was like, you know what? I couldn't not go. I was, we had done the entire festival run for my previous film, online screenings during COVID. I'm like, I just, it's too depressing. And we just, made the choice to go and be as careful as possible. No one else I think I was the only one of the cast and crew that got COVID, but anyway, it happened.
Madness. And then, safe to say, a really good run. Like I would assume, because that's also, it's not a very, it kind of is in that sweet pocket for festival programmers of it's well made, everything about it is good, and it's not 27 minutes.
Right.
It's under 10,
It
right?
was 10 and a half minutes, including credits, yeah.
Which is a sweet spot for sure.
I think what was hard was that we didn't realize until later was that it felt a little like a proof of concept. We thought that because we had an alternative ending that was going to be ambiguous, and we thought that the ending that we had was, a final ending. And a lot of people felt like it wasn't a final ending. And then there was even a lot of debate about what happened at the end, so much so that I talked to a festival expert, like one of those people that helps you figure out where to apply, and she said that there was an air of there's something more to come, an air of this is a proof of concept that would definitely keep us out of some festivals who don't want to program that. So we did have that to contend with. But aside from that, we still did have a lovely festival run, and it went really well. But we always contemplated should we have done a version that was a proof of concept and a version that was like, this is our festival run ending? I don't know. But where it did get accepted, the audiences loved it, and people came up after us all the time, especially the women, saying, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel, and that kind of thing. And that was very gratifying.
For sure. You were actually at the forefront of a cultural movement. You really were. Really were. I can't help but respond to what you just said. I just don't understand other festivals. I don't understand the idea. First of all, more than half of shorts are proof of concept.
Right.
So how could that be a knock against you? But then your film, I am on Team Jamie on this. There is nothing ambiguous.
Oh, you would be surprised.
Well, fine. It's ambiguous if he's just going to hurt her and rob her, or hurt her and
even that.
It could be the harm that will happen to your character is assured.
It's absolutely not. This is what we found out.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We thought it was assured.
He's gonna harm her in some way. The way he's running towards her.
I am telling you, you would not believe the comments that we got. First of all, this was not just one or two people. This was a lot of people that thought he was saving her from a bear. From a bear. They thought he was saving her from a bear or a snake. I am not kidding you. I kid you not. In fact, when we first premiered on Omeletto, we got a lot of views very, very quickly because we appeared on the main platform of Omeletto. And the comment section was insane. The comments, the amount of, okay, I'll just say it, all men
I was going to ask.
who were saying that, first of all, she shouldn't have gone alone. She should have taken a gun, but also he was probably saving her, or he could have been saving her from a bear or a snake or that kind of thing. But also men were very angry about the film and gave it a lot of thumbs down. And because of that, we had to get moved on Omeletto to their drama platform. It was fascinating. Yeah.
Oh, because it was in their horror area.
It was in their regular big platform. So we got, in just a couple of days, we were up to 37K views. And then all of a sudden, because of so many thumbs down, it changed whatever the course of it. And they had to, whatever, I don't know exactly how it works, but I guess if there's a certain amount of down likes to up likes, but they loved the film so much, they're like, we're just going to relaunch it on the drama platform instead. But the comments were wild. And it reflects the man versus bear conversation that happened online that was, the men being very angry. And we thought, well, of course it's an ending that's very clear, like you thought. No, not at all.
Oh, what do I want to... So awful people, awful men are convinced, number one, the man either has to be, he's either a hero or we're going to blame the victim. Those are their two options.
Right.
Option A is, no, he's heroic and he's saving her from a snake or a bear, which that's not how you save someone from a bear anyway, right? You should stand up tall and put your arms up and act large and walk slowly towards it. So he's rushing at her to hurt her.
Yeah.
But also... Or it's her fault, really. But by the way, okay, so now I'll mention it. During your Q&A at Sherman Oaks Film Festival, you and I believe Alyssa, who also made an amazing film in your block, had, to me, one of the most fascinating conversations during your Q&A about dealing with dangerous men.
Oh, are you talking about Claire Cooney? Claire?
Oh, was it Claire?
Yeah.
Yes, because Alyssa, her actor wasn't there. That's right, Claire.
Yeah.
Claire did, yes.
Yeah.
And she spoke, and she actually brought up how she has to try to let men down easy because they could hurt her if they're too hurt by her. And I was like, this is just amazing that you two got to have a conversation with an audience.
Yeah.
Where two women are talking about how they have to navigate the dangers of men.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, too, is when people read the feature. So when women read the feature, they were terrified and they're like, this is a horror film, the entire time, on the edge of their seat, terrified. When a lot of men read it, they totally got it and they, appreciated and all of that. But there were a number of men who didn't think enough happened, didn't think it was scary enough, thought that there should be a bear attack in it. I got that a lot. Specifically, there should be a bear attack and sometimes that Terry should save her from bear. There were all these things that it wasn't, the way it wasn't enough, wasn't scary enough, not enough happened. She didn't try hard enough to get away. All of these things. And that's, I think, why it was so important to make the proof of concept, because we needed to show the audience how moments where two people are just standing there talking, it's terrifying. And
it really is.
And it was, I think and men did come up to me afterwards, after the screenings, a lot of times, and say that was terrifying to me. So it did. So I think it was just, we had to make the proof of concept.
It's funny because I'm looking like you did submit it as drama. And I get submitting as drama because that way, particularly like as someone starts the film, when you call it horror, then they're expecting something bad to happen to her on that trail.
Yeah.
But I'm going to pull out my favorite quote of the last 2 weeks. We actually had an amazing film last week at Film Invasion in Los Angeles called Good Girls Get Fed, which did you see it as part of as a screener? It was in the...
Which category
It was in
it?
horror.
No, I didn't watch the horror.
See, and it's in horror. It's three women trapped in a basement, forced to perform things on camera for someone who delivers food if they please him.
Right.
And it's an amazing analogy to life and blah, blah, and blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the writer-director, a woman, has dealt with a lot of people telling her it's not horror. And I said to her, so when Get Out came out,
Right.
I was at a gathering of friends, and a white friend was saying it wasn't horror, and my black friend said it's not horror to you.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. In fact, in the pitch deck for the feature, we specifically name that. We specifically say Get Out and what it did and what it is, because that's exactly right. This is, and I didn't even, to be honest, consider it a horror because I couldn't, I'm so scared of horrors, first of all. I didn't think I was writing a horror, but when people were reading it and telling me that it was, we actually submitted to a lot of horror film festivals and got in. And we, at the Nightmares Film Festival, which is such a wonderful horror film festival, that we won Best Thriller within the horror film festival. And so I think a psychological thriller on the edge of horror is how I would describe it, but to women, it is flat out horror.
It's flat out horror.
Absolutely.
And thankfully to men and persons who are non-binary who have empathy on this planet, it's also horror.
Absolutely.
Because I was instantly worried for your character.
Yes.
But, and not all fathers are good guys.
Right.
But I do lean on we have a 16-year-old daughter, and you can imagine what life is like.
Yes.
Having a young female person who identifies as female in this culture at age 16, dealing with everything we deal with.
Well, and that's why in the film, when he says he has a daughter, it eases her mind.
We must have discussed that. Yeah, it eases her mind, but it shouldn't.
Yeah, but it shouldn't, because so many, I mean, we could go on and on. There's
we could go on
so
forever.
many nuances about it.
And I could virtue signal my ass off, which I admit I do. You can't help it because you just want to make a point.
Yeah.
And, as a male, sometimes when you make a point, you're like, come across like you're virtue signaling, but I'm just trying to make a point.
No, I think it's very, very clear when men get the film versus when they don't, or when men get even the feature script and they don't. And the great thing is that so many men do. So many men do. And that's the whole thing with the man versus bear thing. It's like, people were like, oh, you should remember there's a lot of good guys out there. Well, yeah, that's clear. Like we're not forgetting the good guys. It just doesn't matter. Because when you're getting attacked by the bad guys, it doesn't help, So it's like, the good guys are not forgotten at all. It doesn't diminish anything about
And there's enough films made about the good guys. It's not like your film has to be like, by the way, we don't want all men to. If I had $1 for every time I wanted to grab someone by their neck and shout, just because someone says toxic masculinity doesn't mean that all masculinity is toxic.
That's right.
It means that some masculinity is rapey as fuck.
Right.
Stop being you're against this term. Yeah. How do you feel about rape?
Right, exactly.
Do we have to, I have to resort to that word just to make it clear that that's what we're actually talking about. Yeah. That women have to live at a certain level in fear of sexual assault. Yeah. And worse.
And it's so common, and I think that the amount, how common it isn't fully understood. I was actually talking to a female friend of mine about this the other day, because as women, we talk to each other. So we talk to each other about what we've been through, about any sexual assault, about all of this stuff. We talk about it to each other. Very rarely does this stuff get reported, by the way, because it's too terrifying to report, or it happened when you were a child, or it happened when you were a teenager, or whenever you couldn't do it. So,
or you blamed yourself in the moment.
Or you blamed yourself, or whatever it is. But women talk to each other. So the men are not privy to those conversations. And that, I think, makes a difference, because then it doesn't appear to be as common of an occurrence as it actually is, and all women know that it is way more common than even the statistics because of the amount of non-reporting that happens. And also when you report it, of course, you go through, hell. So why? and most of the time, I think it's something like less than 1% of rapists get convicted. So, yeah. But
no, we had a film about that last December. Backlog. I don't know if you were on the jury last December, but
I might have been. Oh,
Backlog
I was. Yes, I saw that film.
Yeah.
Yes,
but
the backlog of the rape.
And by the way, at her Q&A, she said actually the statistic we show at the end of the film that there's 1 point whatever million rape kits that just haven't been tested because lack of funding.
Yeah.
She said that's actually probably the number per state.
That's right. Yeah, no, that is... I talk about this with my female friends a lot. Can you imagine that? And then your rapist is not only walking free and potentially raping other people, but you have to live in fear of retaliation or a secondary, it's quite unbelievable. And of course...
And if you live in the wrong state and there's a child, he can sue you for parental rights.
That's right. The fear, so why wouldn't you at some point potentially drop it and just want to move on with your life and try? Do you know what I'm saying? It's just a system set up to not hold, anyone accountable.
Yes, and it's bizarrely patriarchal in ways that it's as if because this myth of because the fact that a vast majority of human beings are decent.
Right.
But pretending that the decent human beings need to never, I'm trying to say that we have to realize that the indecent, inhuman people, that's who we write laws for. That's why murder is illegal.
Yeah. Yep.
Not everyone's a murderer, but the 0.02% of murderers manage to kill a lot of people.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why allyship is so important. It really is, because it's like, yes, listen, I have so many amazing men in my life, so many amazing men, including my boyfriend, my father, my brother, all my co-collaborators in the film, my friends, all of this stuff. I have so many good men in my life. That's not the issue. The issue is, first of all, believe women, because I think it is hard to believe women when you're not when you don't really understand the level to which this is occurring and what women are up against and why most women don't even report it. So then when a woman does come forward and then she gets so much backlash, it's mind-blowing to me. It's just mind-blowing. Anyway, so allyship is important.
Mind-blowing. And hopefully, and sometimes even women
absolutely
act cruelly.
Absolutely. And also I know mothers who have not been kind to their daughters when assault has happened and not believed or not supported because there's so much internalized stuff going on for women, at all levels. So yes, absolutely, it has become an internalized issue.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, the one good thing, the silver, I try to be an optimist. The silver lining is I'm praying it helps you get the feature made because it feels like the right moment.
I think so. People, I have two producers who are very excited about it. Of course, my co-producer, Erin Rose, but also a female producer and a male producer, both of which are very, very excited and supportive of the film. And so, hopefully...
They're not pushing you to change the title to Man or Bear, are they?
No, that was just on our trailer.
That would be such a Hollywood studio thing to be like, we're going to fund it and we're going to rename it Man or Bear or Bear or Man, whatever, because we want to seize on the meme. I'm like, don't you realize it'll take 2 hours to get the film done and then Man or Bear won't be a thing anymore?
Exactly.
And then it'll feel like, this film should have come out 3 years ago.
100%. Yeah, so hopefully that won't happen. But
well, knock on fake wood. It happens.
Thank you.
Is that the main thing, or are there other shorts on your plate?
I'm not sure. It takes a lot to make a short, as you know.
Are you like, fuck shorts? It's so much work. I'd rather just do a feature because a feature is like 30% more work.
Right.
But it's not like 100% more work.
I'm kind of at that point a little bit, but listen, every now and then I'm like, ooh, but it would be fun to just make a short, because you can. I mean, you can make a short and then you can get it done so much quicker, and it feels, like it exists in the world. So I don't know. At the moment, I don't think so, because also, I don't have the money to make another short. But
so you're not a trust fund kid.
No.
What are you going to do? Obviously, you're not, because you bartended and shit. So there's a big difference between the Hollywood playground people and the people who weren't blessed without the burden of making a living.
Yeah, but I am doing a lot of writing. So I've, working on other feature scripts, other feature scripts that don't have me in them that, would be just to, potentially sell. I do have a writing manager, which is, great. So,
Excellent. Very cool. Very cool. But the focus is, in a way, the Black Creek Trail
Black Creek
feature.
Trail is absolutely the thing that I want to get done right now. We wanted to do it last year. Of course, the writer's strike. We did get an interim agreement it took a couple months, and then we got it right as the strike ended, so it didn't help us out. But, it's much more delayed than I would want, but that's what indie filmmaking is. That's just the way it goes.
It's always waiting, always waiting, and then all of a sudden it happens way too fast.
Right, and then you're just scrambling.
And then it's never like, okay, cool, now we can ramp up for a year. No, it's like, if someone's going to put money in, they want us to get results fast.
Yeah. I welcome that problem at this point.
Hell yeah. All right. Anything else cool to mention before we wrap it up?
Man, I feel like we really talked.
Kind of did cover. We pats on our back. We didn't. Well, no. I'm sure sexist pigs would hate most of the chat, but what are you going to do?
They probably won't be listening. They
deserve it. No, I doubt it. Yeah. All right, well, cool. Well, then, so people should go to Amaletto, or I bet if they just type Black Creek Trail into YouTube, it'll pop up.
Maybe, but also Black Creek Trail movie.
Yes, movie.com.
Because the link to watch the film is on the site.
Yeah, in fact, make me type that in, because there's a recent college grad who's my podcast producer.
Oh, great.
Hey, Calvin. I try to call Calvin out now because he's been with me for like 6 months now. It's made life a lot better.
Thanks, Calvin.
Yeah. And it'll be a clickable link.
Perfect.
That's awesome. In the show notes.
Okay, great.
And is there social media people should check out too? Or?
We have an Instagram, but I've not been once the festival run ended, there hasn't been a ton. I think our handle is Black Creek Trail Movie. I think it's still Black Creek Trail Movie.
Well, you can confirm it and email me.
Yeah, and also it's, the link to the social media is on our website.
Right, it's on the website. Yeah. So you have actually done the smart thing of having a website that goes to everywhere.
Yes.
There's so many people who are like, do you even need a website anymore in the era of social media? But
in this case,
I'm dated. I think it's good to have a website, a hub, an online hub for all.
Yeah.
Excellent, cool. All right.
Thank you so much.
Sure. I will do my closing ramble, and then we'll stop recording. Then we'll record your 4 questions answers.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, listener, for listening to the Discover Indie Film Podcast. If you want to learn more about the podcast or the TV series on Amazon Prime Video that was born from it, just go to discoverindiefilm.com. On social media, it's always at DIFwins. We mentioned Sherman Oaks Film Festival was where Black Creek Trail won an award. So if you want to learn about that festival that we hold every December, just go to ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. Its sister festival every June is Filmvasion LA, so filmvasionla.com and at Filmvasion LA on social media. And the last thing to mention is I deprecate myself, but I just don't respect my personal time, so I have none left because I started a thing called TVHi to help get indie stuff out there. So just go to watchtvhi.com, and it's mostly just indie stuff with some stand-up comedy and dance films and stuff. It's just I see too much wonderful stuff at the festival level, and then people come on the podcast and it just doesn't. If they're not fortunate enough to get on Amaletto, no one sees it. You put something on YouTube, and you get 100 views. Thankfully, I'm sure Amaretto got you 20, 30, 40. I mean, sometimes the numbers are wonderful. Amusingly, Claire Cooney is involved in Amaretto.
She was a champion for Black Creek Trail on Amaretto. Yeah.
Wonderful. She's so talented.
Yeah, she is.
And her collaborators, also cool. And excellent. All right, well, I think we covered everything. Did I say like and subscribe? Like and subscribe to the podcast. It's everywhere. I don't even know where, but iTunes, this, that, I don't know, wherever you're listening. It's on like 7, I don't know. Thankfully, there's just an app that sends it out to everywhere. All right, I'm going to hit stop. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.